there is a tendency, Yvonne, to call every such event an inflection point, a transformative moment, a historic moment. Peace is around the corner. I'm sorry to be the party pooper here, but none of the above. What we had is a very special, important, emotional day of elation, of hostages coming back. Same thing for the Palestinians with prisoners released. We are far away from any kind of a peace agreement, and even the summit that is scheduled a few hours ahead of us in Sharm el-Sheikh with major Arab leaders and the president of France and the prime minister of Britain and the president of Indonesia and so on and so forth. Still unclear, by the way, whether or not Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to be going. And it's unclear whether he was even invited, but that there are conflicting reports. Even that ceremony, precedes really the hard part, Yvonne. The hard part begins now in terms of the negotiations. Hamas is not disarmed. Israel did not fully withdraw. There is still to be established, or has yet to be established, an Arab interim provisional force, what is called in the document, the International Stabilization Force. So we're looking at a very precarious period of time in which the most important thing is whether or not the ceasefire holds. Calling Trump a peacemaker, it placates, it goes to the heart of people's feelings that had it not been for Trump, the hostages would not be back. If it were up to Mr. Netanyahu, the war would be going on and we wouldn't have this day of jubilation. But to call it peace, what can I say? I'm sorry to be a pessimist, but it is what it is.
Alon, Michael Rowland here. So you're clearly pessimistic about the peace process. One of the important parts of, Stage 2, Phase 2, is for Hamas to disarm.
Yes.
To whom we don't know, potentially some Arab states, and those Hamas fighters who disarm, according to the 20-point peace deal, will be granted amnesty. Realistically, do you see that happening?
No. And, it's not even about being a pessimist. I'm a realist here, really, not as a cliche. Hamas did not disarm. According to the agreement, they were supposed to disarm parallel to Israeli withdrawal and the hostage release. But as you pointed out, Michael, correctly, who's going to collect the weapons? It's not like they're going to the post office or to a Starbucks and handing in their weapons. And it's not just Hamas, it's the Islamic Jihad, which is a splinter organization, and criminal gangs, for that matter, are roving around Gaza. If that doesn't happen, then this entire deal is not only intractable, but unimplementable. I'm sorry for these heavy words. And so, it's not being a pessimist. I'm actually an optimist. But several things need to happen before I let optimism get over me. There needs to be a change of government in Israel, meaning an election, and that puts everything in a hiatus and lull. And there needs to be a continued engagement and commitment by President Trump, which beyond today, we'll have to wait and see if it exists.
Tell us a bit more about that. You're saying that under Trump's plan, it won't be viable, it won't be implementable under the same Israeli government. So what changes do you think need to happen?
Well, here's the thing, Yvonne. There is a right-wing, an extreme right-wing prime minister who has an extreme right-wing, even more to the extreme than he is, coalition partners. If he proceeds with this plan, he basically acknowledges the role of the Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank, in terms of extending governance to the Gaza Strip. He won't let that happen. He can't. It also acknowledges the idea, even if it's a futuristic idea of a Palestinian state. He can't accept that. If he proceeds, Yvonne, he has no coalition. Now, he may be welcoming this change, and him and the extreme right-wing coalition partners, each catering to their own constituencies. They're saying we stood by our principles. He's saying I needed to change course because that was the reality and that was what was required. Fine. But that puts everything on hold for 3-4 months because, an election campaign, Nothing happens. Major decisions are not being made. And so I just don't see this happening at this point. Particularly, I go back to a point I made just earlier, particularly if Hamas is not disarmed. And from all signs that I see, they're not going to be disarmed.
We saw those pictures of Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East envoy, speaking to a rally in Israel over the weekend. You undoubtedly saw them as well. And when he mentioned Benjamin Netanyahu's name, there was a loud chorus of boos. Yeah. You mentioned there the possibility of an election coming up if Benjamin Netanyahu presented himself to the Israeli people to be re-elected as Prime Minister. How do you reckon he'd go?
Very bad. But this is pure political speculation, Michael. I mean, first of all, with Steve Witkoff, I mean, there are two possibilities here. Either he didn't read the room correctly, because he should have known that the mention of Netanyahu's name would elicit boos. And secondly, he may have done it on purpose. I don't know. This is a psychological issue, and I'm not an expert on that. But if you look at consistent polls, 70% want Netanyahu out. Polls are not an election, granted. But people are now going to demand from Netanyahu answers for three things: his responsibility and accountability for the events of the calamitous and catastrophic event of October 7, 2023. Number two, the prosecution of the war and the prolonging what looks like to many Israelis as an unnecessary protraction of the war at the expense of the hostages, who at the last moment were saved, according to Israeli public opinion, by President Trump. So he has his day of reckoning, not to mention other domestic issues that burden him, and a criminal trial that he's undergoing for corruption and other charges on 3 indictments. So if he calls for an election, he will probably lose, according to polls. But this is me guesstimating. He hasn't called for an election yet.
Meanwhile, Alon, we're expecting the leaders to travel to Egypt to sign a document ending the war in the Gaza Strip. What does that mean? What will it entail? Well,
first of all, Yvonne, and we just alluded to that, if Netanyahu is not there, what is the point of the president of France and the president of Indonesia and the prime minister of Italy and Trump signing? It's like ending World War II without the U.S., without the Soviet Union, without Britain. And so without Mr. Netanyahu's, and I still don't know, there are conflicting reports, as I said, whether or not he's going or not, whether he was invited or not, whether he wants to go or not, I don't know. If he does go and does sign that document, that means that the war is over. There's no going back. If the war is over, then in all likelihood, he's going to have major political problems inside his coalition.